Hey everyone, this week on Half Step Down, Renee and I are taking a trip down memory lane as we talk about the old Vans Warped Tour. We're also going to go into the Gorillaz debut album turning 20 this year. We're going to talk about high-end fashion and nerd culture and how they're intersecting for whatever reason. And we're going to go into the weird trend that bands are doing now where they're releasing stuff on tape again. But before we get to that, let's talk about halfstepdownpod.com. It's your one-stop shop for all things Half Step Down. If you are on Instagram and Twitter, you can follow us at halfstepdownpod. The links are on that website. And finally, don't forget to look in the description of this episode for our Spotify playlist. We're always adding songs there, and every once in a while we talk about them on the show. I know it's a novel concept. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy the show this week. Half Step Down starts now.
I was like 14 years old.
What was that?
Was an ice cream from the ice cream truck today.
Oh, nice.
And it was the greatest feeling in the world. I had a UFO. But I heard the ice cream truck coming from like a distance.
Yeah.
And I felt like Eddie Murphy in Delirious, where he talks about when you're a kid, you're just like, ice cream! Mom, throw me some money! Yeah, that was
nice.
me. It was great. I didn't ask my mom for money. I bought her ice cream, but it was nice. It was a nice feeling to have a UFO, even though it was really melted. Like every bite I took was just like falling in my hand. I don't like that. That's not fun.
It was a hot day today, man.
It was a beautiful day, though.
It was nice. It was very nice.
Yeah. Every time I think of it, every time I say it's a beautiful day, I start singing Michael Bublé.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it's a beautiful day.
I go U2, but that's just me.
See, but I'm a bubble kind of guy. Yeah. You seem so excited that I'm talking about Michael Bublé at the start of the show.
No, man, I'm just telling you, it was nice. I had people over today for the first time, like some normalcy.
Nice. How did that go?
That was awesome. We had jammed out. We did a stream on Twitch of us just jamming out. And then we had some beers in the backyard, just kind of hung out. They were all like kind of coworkers, double vaccinated. We'd all waited. It was like one of the first things where like we were all 2 weeks after our second dose. So it was like, all right, dude, spring break, let's just do it. And it was fun.
Nice. Now that I'm vaccinated, you're vaccinated, now we can try to get this thing going in person for the first time. That'd be fun. Right?
That'd be cool.
Fingers crossed. Well, welcome everyone to Half Step Down, where two aging punk rockers talk about pop culture and punk rock. We are your co-hosts, Renee Grano and the beer-drinking man, Jose Martinez. How are you today?
I'm not bad at all, man. It was a good day.
Good. It sounded like a good day. And it was a beautiful day, so we can't complain, right? We're in Southern California.
Dude, it was nice. It was hot. First time in a while.
It was. It's nice and toasty, but it's cooling down, so that's always good.
No, dude, yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of it getting warm, it's the start of the spring season, which means it is right next. Summer's coming up. Next thing you know, we're going to blink and summer's here. And one of the greatest things about us growing up as punk rock kids was the Vans Warped Tour. And this is around the time where we start finding out the bands, the lineups, what stages are going to be on. Even if there's also local stages, which was also pretty cool. Who's going to be at the Warped Tour? The Warped Tour was a big deal for us.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a big deal for me in high school. I was from 99 to 02, so it was definitely one of the things you look forward to every year.
Yeah, absolutely. A little information on the Vans Warped Tour before we get into it. The Warped Tour started in 1995 by Kevin Lyman, and it ended in 2018, where in 2019, Kevin Lyman brought back the Warped Tour for 3 one-day festivals. It was like the 25th anniversary of the Vans Warped Tour, so then he ended up doing one in California, and one in the Midwest and one in the East Coast. One of the biggest issues that I read, one of the biggest rumors or biggest issues was the fact that financially they just couldn't cover it anymore. I mean, they went from the hype of making their height of the Vans Warped Tour to making $25 million a summer to cutting down to $9 million in 2017, which we'll get into in a little later. But, over the span of 25 years, it was a big influence in our lives, right? Like, and the demographic from 14 to 17, if you were not in our scene, if you were not at the Warped Tour every summer in high school, then you were missing out, because it was just an amazing time. It really was an amazing time. It doesn't matter how old you were at the time, but what scene you were in, but you always got to see some of your favorite bands, right? Like, you had bands that started off there, like Sublime, No Doubt, Katy Perry even got her start there, Blink-182. One of the years that I went, Linkin Park actually did a surprise set, which was pretty rad. I wasn't a big Linkin Park fan, but the fact that a band like that big at that, at their peak, was at the Warped Tour is pretty rad. So, you have bands like Less Than Jake, Bad Religion, NoFX. Man, the list can go on and on, which we're going to talk about in a bit as well. But, Jose, what were some of your memories of the Warped Tour?
Well, I remember it just being the tour where all the bands I wanted to see were playing. So, for me, it was bands like NoFX. It was bands like, I think one year early on, Suicidal Tendencies played. Melancholy. You could see TSOL on the Warped Tour. You could see the Casualties. You could see Bad Religion. And it was one of those things where it's like all the punk rock bands that I grew up liking were there, but there were also new bands, and then there were also stuff. There was like ska bands. There was reggae bands. They did a good job of kind of keeping it in that genre, at least for the years that I was going. I was actually at the Warped Tour that Katy Perry played. That was the last time I went.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually went to that one. That was a weird experience, because it was a different festival at that point. But they still managed to kind of keep some of the kind of punk rock aesthetic, and a lot of the bands were there. But you could definitely see them changing for the changing taste of the time.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I actually think, as on a business standpoint, just like we had in the Hot Topic episode, which, if you guys haven't heard it, please go back and listen to. It's a great episode. It's where you have to go with the times, right? You can't be left behind. And that's one of the things that I had noticed growing up, because I actually went in my mid-20s, and I realized that I didn't belong there, because first of all, I was taking my two 15-year-old nieces to Warped Tour, and I was like, man, I do not belong here. Like, what am I doing here? But there was a lot of bands that when I went, I also wanted to see, like Bayside and the Wonder Years and The Story So Far. Then you had bands like Sailsin, a bunch of old bands too, like from the mid 2000s, like the emo scene and stuff were also there as well. And I definitely think that they did a very good job at like adapting to the scene, because regardless if you were a Bad Religion fan or if you were a Story So Far fan, or the Aquabats fan, you always had a really good mixture of bands. And I think that's something that Kevin Lyman set out to do, right? Because from what I saw in some of the documentaries and some of the articles that I saw, he was in the music business for quite some time before he decided to say, hey, you know what? I love punk rock, I love ska, I love reggae. Why don't we get a lot of these bands and see if we can get them together? I think one of the cool things about the Warped Tour was the idea that they were able to try to create a voice, right? And to get all of these outsider scenes that you and I talk about a lot on the show, and being able to kind of get them all together, which I think is pretty rad, right? I mean, because even in my time, like, I got to see Less Than Jake and Real Big Fish and the Aquabats and stuff back in like 2012, 2013. And on top of that, I also got to see the Wonder Years, and I got to see the Used, which was a big band growing up when I was in high school and stuff like that. So that was also pretty cool too. So, and I remember going to all the tents and getting to see that was actually one of the cool things too, is being able to like talk to the bands. I don't know how often you were able to, but being able to talk to them was also pretty rad too, because you don't really get to do that at like venues,
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that was cool. It was like you knew all the kids like from the scene would be there. You knew that the bands, especially because they were usually smaller bands, right? So it was like they'd be working their merch tents. And it was just kind of like a fun thing to do. It was one of those things that at the time, if I were going to spend money on a concert, I would much rather do a festival, because you could see so many bands. And then I honestly just think like this dude Kevin Lyman is just a good businessman, right? He just figured out a way to kind of get a bunch of bands on tour, and and just a similar aesthetic, but not similar sounding.
Yeah.
But it, I think maybe that alienated certain people. But again, like you gotta change with the time. There's really nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're associated with Vans, which is kind of like they were the punk rock skater shoe, right? To some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But they're very trendy now. So you got to kind of take that into account, especially when they ended, 2018? That's 3 years ago now.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a question for you. While one of the interviews or documentaries that I was watching, they were mentioning that in 2017, the Warped Tour hit their all-time low by making $8 or $9 million in revenue, but Coachella at the time had made over 7 figures, or 8 figures, 7 figures, right? Yeah, 7 figures. Now, or I'm sorry, I would have like $100 million, whatever it was, right? I'm sorry, I'm not good with adding extra zeros. I'm not sure how many figures that is, right? But now, one of the things that Kevin Lineman said in the interview was that he felt that the presence of social media, the concept of streaming, the concept of being able to stay home and watch things and watch live music on YouTube now and all that stuff was one of like the biggest issues on why the Warped Tour started to fall. But then you had Coachella, which is the total opposite, right? Which you had pop and hip hop. Do you think, outside of the outsider cultures that you and I love, why is it that, and this is just you and me talking here, why is it that Coachella made so much more money than a Warped Tour would? And do you feel it is because people are transitioning to just pop and hip hop now?
Well, I mean, I think you're talking about like Coachella now, right? You're talking about a show that's going to have Beyonce and Jay-Z and Paul McCartney, right? You're talking about giant draws. Like those are acts that sell out, stadiums, right?
Yeah.
Versus the Warped Tour, where it's a bunch of bands that are going to maybe sell out clubs or theaters. So you're talking about the difference between an artist that's going to pull in, 10, 20, 30,000 people versus an artist that's going to fill a club of 5,000, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So it's obviously going to make less money. And then I think with something like Warped Tour that was like a traveling show, there's just a lot more logistics involved. Whereas Coachella is 2 weekends in one place. Obviously, you're going to pay the bands more because they're bigger bands. But I think it's just easier to be like, okay, we're gonna have one show a year, and they're gonna come every year, and that's just gonna be the thing, right? You can charge more money, and you make it like a weekend. I think that's the thing that's killing the traveling festival is now there are festivals that are just kind of stationary that you have to travel to.
Mm-hmm. But after 24, 25 years, do you honestly think that they didn't nail it? God, after 25 years of something that was working, it kind of just fell off. Is it because of the fact that there is no big bands, that it's just small bands? Do you think that maybe if they would have had bigger bands, it would have been different?
I mean, I think this is something that I go back to the traveling festival. Remember Lollapalooza used to travel, right?
Yeah.
And you got to think of the logistics of all of that, right? It's like you're gonna get
Bamboozle used to travel too, right? I think it started here and then went out to the Midwest or the East Coast, I think. Yeah.
But I mean, did they whenever they would have Bamboozle, would it travel the entire country and then come back?
No, you're right. It would only do 2-3 cities.
So Warped Tour went from the West Coast to the East Coast all summer, right?
Yeah, in 90 days, in 3 months. Yeah.
So it was coming to your town. So it's like the logistics of making sure you have enough bands, because the bands wouldn't play every stop. You know what I mean? So the logistics of getting, goddamn, sometimes there were 60 bands, all the buses, all the preparation required to do that and move it. That's an expensive. That's an expensive, endeavor.
Yeah.
Versus it's stationary, and all the bands come to you. And there's already infrastructure for hotels and all that shit for people to go there.
Yeah.
versus, you know, okay, how many stadium parking lots is the Warped Tour going to find that are empty? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was always easy to find parking at the Warped Tour.
Yeah. So it was like, it was just one of those things.
It was far, but you always found one. Yeah.
But the other thing, and it kind of with those logistics, is like you take something like Coachella where because it's in one place, they're going to put on like a more the production value is just going to be higher, right?
I agree.
Especially
right.
with the fucking caliber of bands that they're bringing in, right? Beyonce's going to have fucking lights. You know what I mean? They're going to have light shows, they're going to have dancers and all that shit.
Can you imagine fucking Beyonce at a Warped Tour?
Towards the end I could.
Yeah. That would have been rad.
Because it just became something else. And that's fine. I think like Punk Rock Bowling kind of took over the mantle of like the kind of punk rock. Well, obviously the Punk Rock Festival and Riot Fest took over some of that. But you saw like a lot of those traveling festivals, like Ozfest went away, and that used to be like the metal one.
Yeah, was Ozfest a traveling festival?
I think it was for a while.
Okay,
and it was just
kind of up. Interesting.
And
That'd be
I
kind
think,
of interesting.
I think now I don't know if they still have it, but if they do, I bet you it's like in one place.
Yeah.
But I don't think they do. I think now there's a different metal one. I don't remember what it is.
Okay. Interesting. You know, on the topic of festivals and like, what are some of your favorite bands? What are some most memorable moments at Warped Tour? Like band moments, I guess. What are some of the best sets you've seen at Warped Tour that you can remember off the top of your head?
I mean, I remember the first Warped Tour I went to. God, that had to be 99 or 2000. I don't remember 99 or 2000, but it was NoFX, and they played basically every song I had ever wanted them to play at the time. Yeah. And I don't know if you haven't seen NoFX, they either put on the best show or they put on a very mediocre show. And it's all kind of dependent, and they were on that day. And it was like, it was them. I remember Melancholy was there. I want to say something like Pennywise was there, like Bad Religion. It was just all these bands that I really loved growing up. And it was just rad. And then just to see all these other punk rock kids was like definitely something that made me go like, yes, this is what I remember.
Man, I remember Melancholy was like a big deal for me in high school.
I still love that band.
Yeah. My first Warped Tour was in 2002, 2003. I remember watching. So this is. We've talked about this before. Like, you and I are only 4 years apart, but when you're younger, 4 years is a big gap, right? Like, when I was 14, you were already in high, in 8, you're already out of high school, sort of thing, right? So I think that the scene definitely changed. When I went to my first Warped Tour, you had bands like Slick Shoes, Rufio, a band called Vox, The Used. I remember Stun was there, but then you also had like Pennywise. I remember that because that was the first. From the Ashes was the first Pennywise record I've ever bought, and that was the Warped Tour was the reason why I bought my first Pennywise album. And I remember buying it at a Penny Lane because that was their like latest release, and they were promoting it at the Warped Tour.
Right.
And then I remember there was like a drive-through stage at the time. I think it was like 2003, 2004. So you had like all the drive-through record bands too, like the Early November, Your Favorite Band, You Found Glory, Something Corporate, all those like pop punk emo bands and stuff. So, I mean, you talking about like NoFX, Bad Religion, all that stuff. I mean, how big of a difference was it, from like 99 to 2002, 2003, right? So such a big gap.
So I'm
such
looking
a big difference only within 4 years.
So I'm looking right now at the 2000 a poster from 2000, and the bands are like Green Day, NoFX, Jurassic 5, MXPX, The Mighty Mighty Bosstones, Save Ferris, Melancholy, Less Than Jake, Unwritten Law, Flogging Molly, TSOL, versus Let's Go Forward to
Let's go 2004. 2003, 2004.
So
let's do 2003. I think it was 03.
Okay, so 2003, you have the Ataris, Dropkick Murphys, Glassjaw, Rancid, The Used, Pennywise, Less Than Jake, Poison the Well, Suicide Machines, Face to Face, Andrew WK. So similar for sure. Coheed and Cambria was at that one.
Yeah.
Bowling for Soup. You're starting to notice a lot more of the kind of pop punk acts. And then as you go forward to 05.
Let's shoot to 06. How about 06?
06?
Yeah.
Same thing. I mean, you got NoFX, Rise Against, Anti-Flag, Motion City Soundtrack, Under Oath, Save the Day, Joan Jett, Against Me. This might have been one of the ones I went to, but I don't remember.
Okay.
But yeah, no, like as it goes on, you start to notice they kind of kept that, but I do remember like seeing interviews with like Fat Mike from NoFX talking about how the tour had changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just being kind of like a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what, man? Fast forward to like 2012. Do 2012. Let's see who was there in 2012. So I think that was the last one I went to. 12 or 13 is the last one I went to.
So 2012 was Newfound Glory, The Used, Rise Against, Taking Back Sunday, All Time Low, Anti-Flag, Streetlight Manifesto, Of Mice and Men, We the Kings, Yellow Card. And now I can't read possibly all these because there were just a ton of bands.
Yeah, a ton.
And that's
another
thing.
At that point, they had like 6 or 7 stages at that point. It's crazy.
That's the other thing is it started getting just bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So once you get to like 2014, it's like the list of bands goes so long I can't even.
Yeah.
I can't even read it.
When I was in my early college years, around 09 and on, one of the cool things about this time of year is the fact that they started releasing bands every day on the Warped Tour, like on the Warped Tour website, to see who was playing, and that is what got you hyped. Well, for me, I was like, oh man, this band's gonna be there, this band's gonna be there, this band's gonna be there, and that just and I used to tell my friends, as long as there's 5 or 6 bands that I want to see at the Warped Tour, they're getting my $40. Because if you think about it on a financial standpoint, that pays for itself. Because you get to see the bands that you want to see, and they're gonna play the hits, right? Like there's on Spotify, there's a Motion City Soundtrack like EP of them playing at the Warped Tour. It's like 6, 7, 8 songs, and it's all the hits. And I remember always looking back at that, I was like, man, like every time you want to see a band, it's always great to see them at the Warped Tour because you're always going to listen to the good stuff, right? Like, well, the stuff that people know. And I think that's always a good way. It was always a good way for the bands to promote themselves, right? Like, I'm sure, like, if we were in a band and we were at the Warped Tour, like, hey, let's just play the hits. Let's get whatever people gets to the tent to buy our records, you know?
Well, it's because you have a half an hour, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So you got to get up.
Hour.
You got to do your half hour, and then you got to get off. Like,
you got to get off, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was as kids, that was the thing for me. It's like it was the most economical way to see a band was to go on to see them on Warped Tour because I think it was $40. It was all day, and you got to see every band you wanted to see. And you could, get merch. You could get all the stuff you wanted. They were always there. So I completely agree with that. That was cool.
Yeah. One of the funniest moments I had at the Warped Tour. So this goes to show you my age. I was maybe in my mid-20s when I took my nieces to the Warped Tour, and I was sitting by the sound booth, just kind of sitting there with my arm up against the railing. I was like kind of just chilling, doing this thing. And these kids come up to me, man, and one of them's wearing a backpack, and he goes, hey, and he goes, do you run this stage? And just for the fuck of it, I was like, what's going on, guys? Like, are you guys okay? He's like, oh, we were just wondering if you can take a listen to our demo. And I remember sitting there just listening to these kids' demo. It was actually not too bad. It was pretty good. And I remember listening to it. I was like, oh, that's good, man. I said, I listened to like a whole song, and I was like, guys, but in all honesty, man, you're talking to the wrong guy. Like, I wouldn't be able to help you. I'm just mixing sound here. Yeah, I didn't even have a badge or anything on me, just some random dude with like an Early November shirt on. And they're like, oh, okay, we're sorry. And then as they're walking away, they see this other dude walking up into the sound booth, and they're like, we just spent 4 minutes with some random guy.
That's hilarious.
I was like, hey man, why not just give give you a ray of hope, trying to show off your demo at the Warped Tour. But you used to get a lot of that too, though.
Something, for the kids,
right? Yeah.
I remember. I have a couple things that I remember from Warped Tour. I remember. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast about my friend that fainted.
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I would remember that.
So the first year I went, this is the first or second year. I don't remember. It was early on.
Okay.
But we had a friend. It was the year that Green Day played, and we had a friend that was just a massive Green Day fan. And he had gotten there early. Figured out what stage. That was always one of the fun parts of Warped Tour, was looking at the giant wall where everyone was going to be at what time, and then figuring out.
Best, huh? And it's like write it down and take pictures if you could. Yeah, that was rad.
Well, I mean, at this time, this was pre-cell phones.
Oh, okay. So just write everything down. Yeah.
Or you just had to remember. Like someone had to have a clock, and you'd have to, or like a watch, and be like, all right, this is where they're going to be whenever.
Jose, for our younger audience, what's a watch?
Watch is a small. I mean, they know what a watch is. People have Apple watches. It's this little device that shows you what time it is.
Oh.
So.
But that's all. That's all it does.
Smartwatches do other things.
Oh, but I'm talking about back in the day where that's all it did.
That's all it did. It just told you what time it was.
Oh, interesting. Remember the ones that had a compass on it?
I remember those. Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah.
So I remember a couple of things about this particular Warped Tour. One, I got my picture taken for LA Weekly because I had my green hair, and this lady was like, you got to take a picture of you." So I was like, "Perfect," which made me feel cool. Two, at the time I was living with my cousin Brenda, and she lived next door to what had to be the hottest girl I'd ever seen at the time. She was just this beautiful girl who was into punk rock. First kiss was this chick, which is a story for another time. But we're walking through.
That was your first kiss?
First kiss was this girl.
Okay.
We're walking through, and she's there. And she sees us, and she runs up to me. She goes, "That's him. That's the guy. This is my neighbor." And she runs up. She gives me a giant hug. And my friends were like, "What the fuck? Who is this?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Dude, that's Sheena. She's my neighbor." And it was just like, dude, it was like, that was fucking awesome. She hung out with us for a while. And then she wanted to go see a band that we had no interest in seeing. And of course, being an idiot, I was just like, all right, well, we're going to go see the band we're going to see. And then we ran into my buddy.
The audience doesn't see me right now, but I'm nodding in disappointment right now. Yeah. Not good.
Shaking your head in disappointment.
Yes.
Then...
Oh, I said nodding, didn't I?
I'm
shaking my head in shaking my head in disappointment.
So then we run into this dude, Alex. And Alex is in front of the stage. It's like noon. Green Day is not going to go on until, the evening. And he's like right in front, center stage for when Green Day gets there. And we're like, dude, it's like a punk show. You can kind of like work your way to the front. And it's also, it's fucking like noon. They're not going to go on for like 6 hours. Yeah. He's like, I don't care. I'm not moving. Because I want to see Green Day. Well, July, or whenever this is, Southern California, it's asphalt.
Hot.
It's hot.
Yeah, hot. Yeah.
He doesn't move. He doesn't get water. He doesn't get food. Green Day is about to go on. He faints. Passes out. They had to, emergency get him out of there. And this poor dude, I just remember thinking, you poor... I saw him at school, summer school, and he's just like... I'm like, dude, how was Green Day? Because we watched them from the back, because at the time, Green Day was not cool anymore. But he's just like, I fainted, and I was in the hospital. I didn't even get to see them. And he just had this look on his face of just like, I'm like, dude, we told you to bring water, man. Like, what are you doing?
At least
get something. But poor guy, man.
Yeah.
The other memory I have of Warped Tour, and this is just to show you how different of a tour it was back then. This had to be like 2002. This might have been the last time I went in high school. But I went out to the Ventura one because for whatever reason, I couldn't make the date that was closer to LA.
Ventura, at the Fairplex?
Yeah. So For those of you who don't know or not from Southern California, Ventura is like north of Los Angeles, maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's in the valley.
Yeah, and we're walking in, and it was me and my buddy Hector. And we only really wanted to see Bad Religion. There were a couple other bands we were going to try to go see earlier in the day, but like Bad Religion was the band we were there to see. And we were walking in as the Nintendo crew is walking out. There's a group of kids who are like part of the Nintendo Corporation, and they have this bright ass like Dayglow shirts and like uniforms. And I'll never forget this because I think it was the Game Boy Advance. Like it was like a clamshell. Mm-hmm. They had belts that had like a shit ton of these like all around them Game Boy Advances, and they were all connected because back in the day you had to connect it via cable to play with someone else. Mm-hmm. And they were walking through the parking lot out of the show, and they just looked fucking miserable. And we were watching them walk out and going like, dude, I wonder what's wrong with them. They must have had the worst time. And these fucking crusty punk rocker dudes ran up to them, and they just grabbed the belt and like would yank down the kids' pants. And the kids had to like fight them off. And I just remember thinking, those poor fucking kids have probably been getting shit on all day by these just crusty ass punk rockers.
Yeah.
And they don't even really want to be here. Like, I could not. I'm sure they were like, oh, this is going to be fun. But it's like, no, man, you're out in the fucking hot sun trying to get fucking punkers to play Pokemon. You know what I mean? Like, This was pre the nerd and punk rock thing melding together. So it was just a whole different fucking world.
Yeah. And now they would eat it up if they could.
Now those fucking punk rockers would be wearing Pokemon shirts, you know what I mean? Or whatever. It wouldn't even be Pokemon that were punk rockers. They'd just be like weird fucking nerdy kids, right?
Yeah. It'd probably be like they probably would. It'd probably be these crusty punk rockers with like a Pikachu with a guitar.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just fucking weird.
On stage or something. You know how they mash up all that shit now?
Yeah. That's par for the course, man.
Yeah. Two memories that I have, my most recent memories of the Warped Tour. I'll give you one of my old memories later, but one of my most recent ones, I have two of them from the same Warped Tour. And I had gone, like I said before, the last Warped Tour I went to, I think it was 2012 or 2013, and I took my two nieces, right? And I remember having like a backpack with like a bunch of waters and stuff. Like I was prepped this time around. And mind you, when I was in my early teens, I wasn't like that, right? I have like $100, like $40 in my pocket to buy $12 waters at the time or something, right?
Right.
But this time, I'm in my mid-20s, and I got to take care of my nieces, so I have all these waters and shit and food in my backpack. And I remember walking with them, and I remember just saying, "What am I doing here?" And they go, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "I'm fucking 26, and I'm bringing you to a damn Warped Tour, and I have a backpack full of water and snacks because I need to take care of you guys. Like, right. This is definitely a different Renee,
Yeah.
And with halfway through, I started to forget that I went with them, and I remember I went to go see a band, and I remember just having so much fun at this. Like, I kind of just forgot who I was with, right? And I remember it was being so hot, and for those of you who are in Southern California, the Pomona Fairgrounds is kind of where Jose and I would go see the Warped Tour, because that is in LA County, but it's just like this giant dirt fairground, right? Like, most of it is just dirt, especially when you go to the fairgrounds to see the Warped Tour, you're usually on like these patches of dirt, right? And I remember we went to go see I think we went to go see The Story So Far, and I remember I was like trying to get into the middle of the pit, and there was just like this smoke, like this huge just dust everywhere flying all over the crowd. It was just insane, right? And by the end of the day, I remember sneezing and just sneezing dirt. Like, and just dirt coming out. I was like, dude, that's disgusting. And I remember dropping off my nieces, and my one of my cousins was looking at me, and he goes, dude, what's wrong with you? I forgot that I was wearing a tank, and I was just sunburned from my shoulders down to my back.
Oh, that was always real.
And my mom, I remember, I was like, Mom, can you help me? She has an aloe vera plant. She was rubbing aloe vera on my back, and every time she'd rub it, you just hear the aloe vera sizzle. Like,
oh, yes.
just sizzling because of how burnt I was. I remember that was I was uncomfortable the next day. That was probably the worst sunburn I ever had. Yeah, that was definitely the worst one.
That was always very real, right? Because usually by the end of the day, you were in a tank top and you had the lines. Because, yeah, it was an outdoor festival. It was like a thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But that's probably my worst memory of Warped Tour is the dirt. I mean, I'm sure it's not like... Because I've been to Ventura as well. And Ventura's all asphalt, right? Like, it's straight just cement and asphalt. Like, at the fairgrounds, if you remember, it's all just dirt, dude. It's fucking everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah, I think I only went to one at the Fairplex because they used to also do it in Anaheim.
That's right. They did do it in Anaheim.
So I think I went most of the time to the Anaheim one.
At Angel Stadium.
Angel Stadium, yeah. I think it was at Angel Stadium.
That's right.
But so, yeah, and that was a whole different thing. Yeah, if you went down in the pit and you had shorts, like you were just going to go home with gravel in your knees for weeks.
Yeah.
So I remember that.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You.
I was just going to say a little off topic, but when we went to go see, I'm sure I mentioned this before, but do you remember when we went to go see Voodoo Glow Skulls at the Virgin Megastore, and there was a pit going on, right? Mm-hmm. But this was more like a dance pit, right? Usually for ska, there's always more of a dance pit than like a mosh pit, you know? And I don't know if you remember, there was some dude skanking. Thank you. And there was always people just like this. I remember this dude. We were sitting on the back, and this dude just like trying to mosh, and I remember this girl just looked at him and gave him this look and just waved her finger at him like, you don't do that here, like just like this horrible look. And I remember the guy was just like, okay. He kind of just all right, okay, I'm good, I'll just walk away. Yeah, I remember that one. That was insane. Yeah, I know, like there's an etiquette to mosh pitting. Yeah. I've had to like enlighten some kids in my classes who it's like there are no rules to mosh pits. I'm like, no. There are rules. Like there's a certain etiquette to it that you need to be familiar with, and you don't want to be the guy that's trying to start a mosh pit when no one else wants to do that. That's the annoying fucking guy. They have the guy that just keeps pushing people back and forth. It's like, dude, stop. It's like, dude, if you start doing that and it opens up, then you've got it. Good. Yeah. But you've got about a 5-second window of this is working, and then you need to stop, like, and go find wherever the pit is. Yeah. And then that's where you're gonna go. But yeah, I don't even remember what we were talking about when we got to this, but I liked where it's going because. What was your most embarrassing mosh pit experience? It doesn't have to be the Warped Tour, but I guess since we're on the topic of mosh pits. Mosh pits. Because I have one, but I don't know if I have an embarrassing one. I've had some very painful mosh pit experiences, but what's yours? Let me see where you're coming from. So, back in 2011, 2012, somewhere along the lines there, I went Newfound Glory. Obviously, it's a Newfound Glory pit. So you know it's raw. You know the pit's going to be hardcore if you're at a Newfound Glory show. Oh man. Newfound Glory were doing their 10th anniversary show 10th anniversary tour for their album Sticks and Stones, which essentially put them on the map, right? Okay, yeah. I went to the first one with an ex-girlfriend of mine. I went to go see Sticks and Stones with her at the Glass House in Pomona. Mm-hmm. And a couple of my friends, and by this time they did like a second run, like a second leg of the tour at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And I told my friends, I want to go with you, because at that point I was single, right? And I said, I want to go. Let's go. Let's all go together. Mm-hmm. So we took off to San Diego, which is about an hour and a half from here, 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And they played at the House of Blues in San Diego. And I remember drinking before then, so I was pre-gaming before the show. Mm-hmm. And by the time Newfound Glory came about, I was belligerent. I was blitzed. Like completely blitzed, right? And I remember getting so pumped for Newfound Glory. I remember having my arms crossed, standing up in the middle of the pit. Like there was a big circle. Like people were already prepping for this. And I remember just kind of sitting there. And next thing you know, I doze off, bro, and I fall asleep. Oh, nice. Completely fall asleep standing up, dude. That's hilarious. My friend Paul shoves me, and I wake up. I'm like, whoa, Newfound Glory, let's do this. Like so excited. He's like, dude, they're not on you. I was like, oh, what happened? He goes, dude, you fell asleep. I said, oh, sorry. And I was just standing there, and I just dozed off one more time with my head down, just completely passing out, standing up. Right?
Oh my god!
It just passed out completely, and I remember just not. I don't remember the rest of the show. I just remember waking up in the middle of the night, just like super dehydrated because I needed water. Because the next morning I woke up and I saw my clothes on the chair, my jeans, my socks, my shirt, everything just completely full of sweat.
Oh,
so
my
like
God.
I'm sure I sweat the whole alcohol, but I don't remember a damn thing. But that was probably my most embarrassing moment in a pit. Yeah, passed out.
Oh man, I see. I was always very good about not getting too trashed before a show.
Yeah.
But oh man, yeah, I don't know if I have an embarrassing story. I've had guys. I remember at the Troubadour, some guy climbed the rafters and
That's
jumped.
such a great venue too, the Troubadour.
The Troubadour, I think, when you say that, I just read something about how I think it's like the number 2 venue in the country, according to like
Really?
Rolling Stone, in terms
Oh,
like
wow.
their favorite venues. The Troubadour is
It's so small.
it's
right?
so small.
So small.
It's
Yeah.
so tiny, and it's just great.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds good. Everything about it. What was the thing? Yeah, it was. I think it was TSOL at the Troubadour, and some fucking guy in like a fully studded leather jacket, like just studs all along the back, jumped off and landed on me and my buddy, and just completely fucked up my hand. Because it was just like I like completely like everything was fucked up. It was bruised and cut because he had those stupid studs on his fucking jacket.
Oh yeah,
And it
it
was
just
like
destroyed
fuck.
you.
So it was just
Yeah, it
bad.
destroyed you.
But
Oh,
again, like
man.
that was because you could get on like when TSOL came back. Their whole thing was like they tried to have shows the way like old school shows were, so they didn't really have much security. You could get on stage and jump off.
Yeah.
So,
But then again, how high is the stage from the Troubadour, right?
well, yeah, but I mean, normally there's a guy stopping you from getting on stage,
Yeah,
or there's
sure.
that barrier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
of course.
then they were all about it. Like, yeah, it was a very low stage.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the Troubadour because the early November, I saw them there. The last time I saw them there was a couple years back. And the bass player has a knack to, like, he has a lot of energy. And the bass player, at times, during a one song called The Mountain Range in My Living Room, there's, like, a really long, like, interlude, long bridge. And for a long time, he'll, like, get on top of the speaker and he'll start pumping the crowd up and, like, go, I can't hear you, you know. And then when it comes back in, he always jumps off the speaker. Mm-hmm. And I guess they've been like, I saw this interview once that they said he's not allowed to do that anymore because they've been sued like 3 or 4 times because he like belts somebody on the head with like the head of the bass or something like that.
Yeah.
And like he was climbing over like the amps and getting to the top of the tier, and you just hear the singer go, "Get down!" Like just come like in the middle of the bridge, you just hear him like, "Get down, dude!" And I remember he like jumped. Yeah, he got back to the speaker, like jumped off the speaker, but he was trying to get higher than that. And I just remember like, oh, dude, that was rad. He had to yell at him in the middle of the show. It was too funny.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. So, getting back into the Warped Tour, I think we're gonna end it in a couple minutes. But I guess the one thing I definitely do want to ask you, and myself as well, is what are some of your favorite moments of the Warped Tour? And if you could have your own Warped Tour, what were some of the bands that you would want to see?
You know, man, I just enjoyed. There's just something about that, especially when you're young and you get to go to a festival and it's like all your favorite bands. Even just chilling in the tent, like waiting for your band to go on. That was just always the funnest part. Like, you just spent all day listening to good music and you'd come home tired as fuck and you just sleep. I don't know, man. If I could do my own. That's a very good question. That's hard though for me to figure out. I don't know. It would be a very mixed match group of bands. But I guess I would try to keep it with within the punk rock realm for me.
Mm-hmm.
What about
you? Some of my most memorable moments at the Warped Tour is you're just the bands, man. Like, there's a different feeling, and I hope the people that are listening, I hope you guys have been to a Warped Tour, so they kind of understand what we're talking about. But for those of you who haven't, if you guys have been to concerts before, if you guys have been to shows, Right, like there's a big difference when you just go see one band, right? Like you go see, I don't know, let's just go see. We're gonna go see Coheed and Cambria, right? And you have maybe 2-3 bands that are opening for them, and sometimes if you get lucky, you might know one of the bands, right?
Right.
Before Coheed and stuff. But the beauty about the Warped Tour is that, yeah, you don't get a headliner, but you get a lot of the bands that you love listening to, and I think that's something that it made the Warped Tour what it was, you know, especially in our scene, like whether it's ska, punk rock, pop punk, hardcore, whatever it is you were into at the time, you were able to at least, for me at minimum, at least 5 or 6 bands, and that's something that I'll always remember, like just being able to see those bands, and on top of that, see bands that, like, there's some bands that I remember seeing at the Warped Tour that's the reason why I like them. Like one of the ones that we talked about it before on the show is Bayside. I was never a huge Bayside fan, but when I saw them at the Warped Tour, that totally made me think, like, I want to listen to Bayside. You know, that's one of the bands that really stick out to me. But, you know, that's probably me. Like, I mean, I think we're a little too old for the Warped Tour. You know what I mean? I don't think I can do a 12 to 9 p.m. show anymore. I think that's a little too much. I don't know. But you know what? I never got to experience the beer garden, because I do know they had a beer garden, and I just never got to experience it, because when I finally went after 21, there wasn't... I went, like I told you before, right? I had to take some other people with me, some of my nieces, so I didn't get to experience that. But maybe that would have been different for us. Do you think if you and I went now, we'd probably just be at the beer garden most of the time?
I mean, so the last big festival I went to like that was Punk Rock Bowling. I'm gonna try to pull it up because I want to know. It was 2014, and that, like, I was able to do. Now that was Vegas, so it's hot as shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, like having that beer garden, having some money so you can just sit and eat, right? Like,
yeah, because we were 17. How much money did we really have in our pockets, right?
But I mean, I think we can make it. I mean, that one was hard for me because we went to Punk Rock Bowling. It was Memorial Day weekend, you know, and then I had to be at work on Tuesday, so it was Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So I remember the reason we went was because the Descendants were playing, and at the time the Descendants had just come back. I had only seen them, I think, one other time, and it was just a lot of bands. I pulled it up. It was Descendants, No Effects, Against Me, Face to Face, All, Anti-Nowhere League, Reverend Horton. Like, it was just all these bands I really wanted to see. But either way, I think it was Sunday night, Face to Face closed. And they were a band that I'd always liked, but when I saw them live, I'm like, I'm now a huge fan. Like,
yeah.
But I remember going to that show, being there all day. Face to Face ends, and I have to be at work at 7 a.m. So I drove from Vegas home and then went to work.
Oh, man.
So that was a brutal day.
Yeah.
And then I got sick from the pool party there.
Oh, did you really?
Mm-hmm. So
what kind of sick?
So I must have got. So here's the thing. I was really like, this is like our big first festival. I'd never gone to like I'm gonna call them destination festivals, which I think is like where festivals are going now.
Yeah.
I think, you know, like Punk Rock Bowling happens in Vegas, and it happens, I think, like in Chicago. You and I have talked about how like Riot Fest happens, I think, in Colorado, and I think there's another one in Chicago too.
Yeah, Chicago, Denver, and somewhere else, I think. I think there's 2 or 3 of them, yeah.
Right, and like Coachella happens in Southern California. So I think that's where it's going, right? Because you can do some really cool shit. The stages are set up. You don't have to worry about moving everybody. And I think, you know, it's, at least for, you know, these bands, for the punk rockers, like, these are older bands. You're going to have people, you know, you're going to have money to go see these bands now. You know what I mean? Like, people will make a whole weekend out of it. Like, that's their vacation. Just how, like, now, like, there's so many bands that do cruises. Like, that's a huge thing. Have you seen this?
Yeah, well, I know that in pro wrestling they do that. Chris Jericho did a wrestling cruise, and it went super well. But I also know that in punk rock they do that too.
Well, I mean, like, I know
that's like a big thing now.
I know, like, Flogging Molly's done a couple cruises. I know Coheed and Cambria were set to do a cruise. It's just like a thing,
That would have
right?
been rad.
I think COVID shut that down. But, yeah, man. So either way, so the story about that is they had a pool party at one of the pools in downtown. I think it was like the Golden Nugget in downtown Vegas. Golden Nugget does not have a very big pool, guys. Okay? Punk rockers are not necessarily known for being the cleanest fucking people. I get in the pool. The pool is not very big. I'm just chilling out. We're hanging out. I look over, and there are fucking dudes just pouring beers into the water. It reminded me of... You ever see like an 80s movie where the nerds are having a party, and then the bad kids show up to the party, and they start just trying to like take girls' tops off, and it just turns into like this. People are just throwing shit, and I'm in the pool and I'm looking around and I'm like, that guy's just pouring beer. This guy says he's about to take a piss in the pool. These two people are fighting. I think I'm gonna get sick, and I got a terrible fucking flu because I'm sure like it was just piss in terrible fucking bodily fluids. It's punk rockers who just did not give a fuck. But I regret nothing. It was still fun as fuck.
Yeah, I've been to one pool party once in Vegas, and I have realized that it's not... I think all the pools are the same. I think the pool party is just an excuse for people to hang out in their swimwear and just drink beers and hang out. And I'm cool with that. I mean, I had a great fucking time. It was the greatest time ever. But it's like, I want to jump in the pool, and the pool's like 2 feet deep. It goes like ankle deep. I'm like, man, where's the deep end? Like, this is the deep end. Like, this is some bullshit. Like, where can I actually go swimming?
Right. Yeah, pool party's not about swimming. It's just about hanging out. Like you're at the beach, but at a pool.
Yeah, but at a pool. Yeah. Oh, did you hear? I don't know if everybody heard that, but that was a very big firework. Fireworks in my area are 24/7.
Yes, that is true.
The fireworks start in March and they end in February. Yeah, they said for that. But that. Let's head over to our next segment, the last segment of the night, which is called The Wind Down. And we're changing it up a little bit. The Wind Down is just the ramble at the end of the show.
Yeah, I think we're just going to... It's like a more fun kind of thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I've talked about this. The kind of mainstreaming of nerd culture kind of coming into... those two worlds colliding. I think I've asked you this before the show, but are you familiar with Burberry, Renee?
I am not.
Burberry is a very high-end clothing brand. Mm-hmm. And they are now designing outfits for a game called Honor of Kings, which is like an online role-playing game. And this is not the first time that like a luxury fashion brand has started to just jump into that nerdy shit. There was the Louis Vuitton apparently did some shit with Final Fantasy. There was Michael B. Jordan's Coach line that was inspired by Naruto.
Yeah, I heard about that one.
What super nerdy high-end fashion thing would you wear, Renee? Like, if you could get one super nerdy high-end fashion thing, what would it be?
Mr. T's gold necklace.
But who would make it? Like, what designer? And then you've got to be he's got a lot of gold necklaces.
Yeah, that's true.
Chains and chains.
Yeah, it's just chains on chain. He's the real 2 Chainz.
There it is.
I don't know, man. I've never thought about that. Maybe some sort of like Ferragamo socks.
Oh shit!
With some Ferragamo socks with like a logo on it, like a TARDIS or something. That'd be kind of rad.
I could see there being some high-end fucking Doctor Who shit. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, some Ferragambos. I like that.
I don't even know what that is, but like I get like I'm so out of.
Yeah, Ferragamo. Ferragamo's been around from what I remember from the 90s, but it's probably a lot older than that. But yeah, that's what how about you? What would you do? What would you use?
I don't know, man. I'd have to go maybe some shoes or something.
Who would make them?
See, I don't know who for me, Doc Martens are fancy shoes, but I know that's not like high fashion.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I don't know.
You and I should get tickets when it's available to go see like the Backstreet Boys or New Kids on the Block or NSYNC or something like that. But I want to go wearing a pink polo,
Okay.
black slacks, and penny loafers.
Why?
That just sounds like something I'd wear at a boy band show.
Okay. I'll go.
Yeah.
I'll go. Yeah. Renee, are you aware that cassette tapes are having a moment again?
I think we talked a little bit about this last time, but I didn't know that they're having a moment.
Apparently,
do I need to dust off my Walkman or what?
According to Billboard, we're getting some tapes, man. The story so far has a tape coming out.
Oh, really?
Sturgill Simpson has a tape coming out. I don't know. I cannot think of any technology that I'm kind of more glad is gone than tapes.
Yeah, tapes are difficult. Tapes are difficult to deal with.
There's a nostalgia to it for sure. Okay, but in terms of just ease of use and portability, it's not much I can say in terms of like wanting to listen to one song, having to find just a right time to stop, getting to learn how fast the fast forward on your machine was, or kind of learning like to look at the tape and be like, oh, my favorite song is when the tape gets to about here.
Yeah.
But have we now reached that point where it's just like it's so hipsterish that we're just going to start seeing shit like that come back?
I'm waiting for the CDs to come back. I'm waiting for the tweens to become hipsters.
Okay.
To where CDs are a thing, because at least they're going to be more technologically advanced hipsters.
Maybe, yeah.
So that way it'll be easier for us to purchase CDs and not have to worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, at least with the vinyl, you can make that argument. It's like a big thing. You're making a big purchase, but with fucking
and sound is just better with vinyl. So
right. Which is tapes. It's like a weird thing, man.
Yeah, I don't know. Didn't one of your friends they had demo tapes and they had like it was a tape but you pulled out a USB drive and that's where the MP3s were at?
My Pat Campo, who I think we're gonna have on the podcast at some point.
Oh.
Was in a band called Los Angelics, and they had a demo or like an EP that was on a it looked like a cassette but a USB stick flipped out of it. And that's how you
I remember that. I have one somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure I gave them to everybody. There's just all over the place.
Yeah.
You want to feel old?
Sure.
Gorilla's self-titled album turned 20.
It turned 20 years old?
20 years old. 20 years old.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh, man.
That was a big deal album for me.
Very big deal for me too. That was such a Clint Eastwood was everywhere. And you know what? There's singles out there that unfortunately just get overplayed. Yeah. Right? Like Freak on a Leash. Okay. Or
that's an interesting pull, but keep going.
Or any Nirvana song.
Mm-hmm.
So, but for Clint Eastwood, to me, and Rock the House are like two of my favorite tracks of all time. And I know that they're hits and stuff, but I love those two songs. Yeah.
They're great songs. They're great songs.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
Yeah. Rock the House was good. Tomorrow Comes Today was a good one too. That whole I have that on. Didn't I get that for you?
That was a birthday gift for me.
Right?
I have it on vinyl. That was a birthday
gift. That's right. I remember I bought two. I bought myself one too. I said happy birthday to him.
I think
I got myself one.
Yeah, Gorillaz were big, man. I still think they're one of my favorite bands. Just not really being beholden to any kind of musical style and just doing what they want.
I agree.
There's something about that that's in the whole idea of them being a virtual band before virtual bands were a thing. Now there's kind of there's like a flood of them, but yeah.
Yeah, good record. Recommend it. If you haven't heard it, I'm sure you have. Well, I'm sure you've heard Clint Eastwood at least.
At least. Oh man, this is a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed it, man. I enjoy the idea that we can kind of just do what we want, but still stick to a specific theme and just kind of talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I mean, the Warped Tour was it was a moment in time, man, and it was a lot of fun. I'm looking it up right now. Apparently, they're thinking of possibly bringing it back.
So they just went on a hiatus, huh?
They went on a hiatus, but according to Wikipedia, so take it with it what you will.
With a pinch of salt. Yeah.
Pinch of salt. They're due to some legal obligations. They got to wait like 2-3 years. I don't know. I know the last thing I remember hearing about Warped Tour, I guess is there were like controversies around it, because I know the guy from the Dickies got in trouble for yelling at some lady. I don't even really remember, but who knows?
Well, the Me Too movement, I know that in 2015, that was a very big deal too, because that was during the Me Too movement. And I think one of the artists, some guy, some solo artist called Front Porch Step, he was accused of some stuff. And I guess Kevin Lineman, because it didn't happen on the Warped, I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me guys, but I do know that he still let him perform anyways, and that was a very big deal.
I know
that was a huge deal.
There were a lot of bands later in the scene, and that's it's been an issue in just the scene lately that I've seen, of shit like that happening, right? Like just fucking bands getting out of line.
Yeah.
And that's
stupid, horrible.
It's fucking terrible, and
it's terrible.
It is the kind of thing where it's like, do you let this band go on? If you fucking booked them and then people are expecting them to show up, like it's just a fucking. People just need to behave, man. But who knows, man? I didn't really.
I agree.
I don't really know what's going on, but I know I've heard shit like that.
You know what's funny? I met. Well, this is kind of hearsay, but I actually met Kevin Lineman's sister.
Oh.
So when I used to work at a pet store.
Okay.
In Laverne, which is a city, which is literally next door to the fairgrounds. When the Warped Tour was around, I was able to hear the music. I was able to hear music, or so, kind of like faintly, but I was so close. The fairgrounds were maybe 2 minutes from where I used to work, maybe like 5, but I can hear it from a distance. Okay. And I remember some lady had walked in and she went to get some pet food and she gave me her info and it said Kevin Lineman on there for like the account. And I said, Kevin Lineman? And she's like, and I said, are you related to Kevin Lineman from the Warped Tour? He goes, yeah, that's my brother. And I was like, oh man, that's so crazy. And she had mentioned that she would come back and give me passes for the Ventura show. She never did, but that was pretty cool. I mean, if it was her, that was so rad that I got to meet Kevin Lineman's sister. But he goes, yeah, she goes, I'll come back tomorrow and give you tickets for the Ventura show. It's on Wednesday. And I said, yeah, cool, that'd be awesome. Like, sure, like I haven't been to a Warped Tour in years. I would love to do that. If it's free, why not? But so that was kind of cool. I mean, the fact that I got to meet her, if that that was pretty rad. That was my last encounter of the Warped Tour, was meeting his sister.
Nice.
Outside of the Warped Tour. Yeah. So Jose, speaking of the Warped Tour, I know that you can find videos and all that cool stuff online, right? From like bands being able to perform and all, performances and all that stuff. But you know who else is on the internet?
Who?
The Half Step Down podcast.
That's right. Let me see. Let me tell you where you can find that. If you go to halfstepdownpod.com, you can find everything you need to know about the Half Step Down podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We are at halfstepdownpod. Make sure you check out the Instagram stories. We're starting to upload those songs, like the previews. We have been updating. At least I threw a couple songs on that playlist. I know you have too. We got that. Facebook.com/halfstepdownpod. You can find us on YouTube. Just look up Half Step Down Pod in the YouTube search bar. And then if you like what you hear, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast, and use the hashtag HalfStepDownPod and the hashtag Road to 100. And then finally, don't forget, every Thursday night at 7 p.m., Half Step Down Radio on TitanRadio.org. Your weekly dose of the Half Step Down songs of Renee's choosing.
That's right.
I'm not gonna say anything.
The legal team of the Half Step Down podcast says we need to do the plugs twice now.
That's right.
Right? That's the only reason we're doing it twice now, right, Jose?
I think so.
Yeah, because then we'll get sued by our legal team.
That's right. That is right.
Jose, you have yourself a wonderful night. Everybody, have yourselves a wonderful night. Stay safe and enjoy this beautiful weather if you're in Southern California. And we shall see you guys next week.
Take it easy.
Yeah, give it up for this guy. I promise you guys.
Just so we're all clear, that was not like a real song. Okay. I made that up.